Welcome to the Michigan Man Podcast on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V-Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew, for Wolverine fans from coast to coast. Go Blue, and welcome to the show. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Man, what a win against Rutgers on Thursday night at home. Michigan basketball is red hot right now, and this week is going to be action-packed. Joining us with his take on that and more is beat writer Tony Garcia from the Detroit Free Press. First, a few of my thoughts to get us going. Watching this Michigan team is more than a little bit stressful. I think all of you will agree with that. I would just like one game every so often to be a comfortable win. That said, even though it's been a season of nail-biters, here we are, heading into the last three games tied for first and with a very real chance to be Big Ten Conference champions in the regular season. Who would have even hinted at that in October? My guest today says this team defies the odds in every way. If you look at their offensive and defensive numbers, there's no rational explanation for why they are 22-6 and tied with Sparty at the top of the heap. Yet here they are. Either they are very lucky or they've become masters at winning very close games in the last 2 minutes. And that could come in very handy in the Big Ten tournament and the Big Dance in just a couple of weeks. Up next with his thoughts on that and more is beat writer Tony Garcia from the Detroit Free Press. So stay with us. Joining us today to talk Michigan hoops is Tony Garcia from the Detroit Free Press. Tony, great to have you back with us.
Great to be back. Enjoyed it the first time, and things are only getting more exciting now.
Yeah, they are, and we're taping on Friday morning, so we know last night, Michigan-Rutgers, a game that most of the way was ugly. It turns out to be an 84-82 thriller for Michigan. It was just a heck of a game, wasn't it?
You could say that again. I mean, less than 72 hours after Michigan won a game where it scored 49 total points and held the opponent to 46, it gave up 57 in the first half to Rutgers. Rutgers was up, I think it was 72-60, 29 minutes into the game with 11 minutes to play. They scored 8 points the rest of the way. And even still, it looked like Michigan was going to lose. Down one after Tyson Acuff hit a couple of free throws when he was fouled on a three late. Michigan gets the ball back, 12 seconds left, bringing it up court. Big time credit to Dusty May. I mean, you could just see the play was going absolutely nowhere. And with 3.3, some people say 3.6. I thought it was 3.3 seconds left. He calls timeout, draws up an inbound play. Even that is I mean, I won't say botched, but Rutgers has it well defended. The idea was to get the ball to Danny Wolf at the top of the key, have him put the ball on the deck and try to get a look at the rim, or if not, kick to a corner. Trey Donaldson was in one, and Namari Burnett was going to swing down to the left corner. Wolf got trapped, could only put the ball on the deck once, and he saw Burnett, it seemed, out of the corner of his eye, swing pass, and somewhere between 25 and 30 feet after Michigan had made only 4 of 23 pointers all night. I'm not a mathematician, but I believe that's 20%. And then Namari hits the shot of the season to keep it alive. I'd say it's unbelievable, but given the way this season has gone, it is perfectly believable.
As you said, they were 4 for 23, I think it was at that point. And, you know, when I was thinking, what are they looking for out of this timeout? You know, I thought it would be Danny Wolf too. But when he hit it over to Burnett, I think I'd give that shot up too if I'm anyone, if I'm Rutgers. And of course, he nailed it. Namari Barnett had 20 points. He played a really solid game too, didn't he?
He did. And I mean, sure, you can always say that that's a shot you can live with, considering it's 25 feet from the bucket. But if I'm Michigan, that's a shot I live with. I mean, Namari, that has been his spot this year. I mean, stepping into his shot, catch, rhythm. There were so many things about it that really, I mean, so many little details that's more than just one deep shot, right? I mean, go all the way back to preseason. And one of the things Dusty May said he wanted Namari to do was expand his range. He said, you're not we think you can be a consistent shooter from deeper. And there you go. And then And then even just, I mean, after the game that he had on Monday, really, I mean, he was a liability, frankly. It was his worst game this season at Nebraska. You could say that for a lot of people. I mean, for him to bounce back 20 points for the first time since, like, non-conference last year against St. John's, I believe, is just, I mean, it's very easy to be happy for Namari. Great kid, hard worker, stuck it out. He's gone through the injuries. I mean, from Texas Tech to Alabama to Michigan, 4 coaches, 5 years, missed a season. And to have a moment like that, I mean, he's going to have to be a piece as other people are kind of slowly fading a little bit here and the shots aren't falling. They are going to need this version of Namari Burnett.
More props to Vlad Golden, who especially late in the game on both ends of the floor really was amazing, wasn't he?
Oh, those two blocks on back-to-back possessions in the middle of Michigan's 10-0 run may go overlooked just because there's so much to talk about. But no, he was critical. And I believe there was I got a message from Tom Wyrot, Michigan's basketball sports information director. There was a slight box score change. I think Danny was credited with a bucket on accident when it should have been Vlad. So Vlad actually finished with 24, not 22 for what it's worth. Just another monster game from Vlad. It feels like so long ago, right? When it was those first, I believe it was 6 games. He hadn't scored more than 8 in a game through 6. Since then, and 17 of the games have been in Big Ten play, not to mention games against Arkansas and Oklahoma, what have you. He's averaging better than 20 a game. I'm not sure I'm ready to go all the way there yet, but I'm getting closer to calling Vlad Golden the MVP of this team and not Danny Wolf. And a month ago, it seemed like it was a pretty clear runaway, but the consistency with what they've gotten from Vlad, night in, night out, just efficient shooting, even when other people are falling out, the rim protection, just as good as there is in this conference, maybe I could say, from an individual. And so he's, I mean, Dusty knew what he was bringing with him from Boca Raton, right? And even though there were some concerns from a few in the fan base those first few weeks, Dusty was preaching patience and said, "Hey, we'll get this figured out." And another big game from Vlad.
You know, when you watch that game last night, what is it? 14 games, Michigan. I think it's 14. Might be more that they've won 4 points or less. I mean, this team is actually, I think, comfortable in these games now, aren't they?
That's right. So I believe it is 11-4 in 15 games decided by 4 or fewer this year. But if you remember, they started 2-4 in 6 games decided in those close margins. So again, a little bit of math, 9 consecutive wins on victories by 4 points or fewer. Now, there have been a couple of losses sprinkled in there. They got housed by Purdue in West Lafayette. And while it was a close game against Michigan State, I mean, the Spartans definitely pulled away down the stretch to make it a double-digit loss. And I think the most remarkable part of this is in their last 11 games, they are 9-2, yet they have been outscored by their opponents by 11 points. It's just, I've truly never seen anything like it. Their ability to win close game after close game. I mean, really, Mike, there's 2 ways to look at it, right?
Yeah.
And one is you don't want to be a team playing Michigan in a close game because, as evidence shows, they're going to find a way to pull it out. They've done it 9 times in a row. I'm working on a piece right now for the Free Press, of course. Just a little bit of the anatomy of some of these comebacks. I mean, what do they look like? Are there any similarities? How do they happen? And I'm not all the way through it, but the answer is no. There are no similarities. It's not just one way it's happening. I'm looking at like some of their win probability metrics. It was down to 38% against Northwestern, 21% against Penn State. Even Rutgers and Oregon, it was in the final few minutes, it was pretty close to 50%, 61 in one game, 62 in another. It was 42% in the final minutes at Indiana. It was 10% in the second half against Purdue. It was 46% in the second half against Ohio State. And that is before yesterday. I mean, Nebraska, I haven't gotten to Nebraska and Ohio and Rutgers this week yet. Before any of that, before counting the 2 wins this week, which you could maybe say were the most improbable, based on the ESPN win percentage probability, I've multiplied them all across one another. Michigan's chances to win those first 7 games were 0.135%. So 1 in 1,000 approximately that they actually won all 7 of those games. And that's not considering this Rutgers game where they were down to they only had a 5% chance to win late in the game when they were down. All the numbers are running together. I think that means that the odds of this run, when I finish the numbers, it's going to be something like 1 in 20,000 that they win every single one of these games. And so I'm trying to really contextualize just how, or to finish the point, either you don't want to play this team in a close game, or eventually it's just going to go the other way because it's sports. And so you gotta be really nervous about a one and done format like that.
Oh yeah, you do. Well, 3 games left as we head into this final 7-day stretch. The next 2 at home, starting with Sunday's game against Illinois. The Illini, 18-11 on the season, coming off a big win against Iowa the other night, and they too are fighting for an NCAA bid. They're young, they are inconsistent, they're a horrible 3-point shooting team, but they're talented, and it's going to be another tough game, isn't it, Tony?
Yeah, it will be. That's going to be sort of the theme, in case it wasn't the theme all Big Ten season long. That is certainly the name of the game down the stretch here. Maybe you could say it's a good thing to be getting Illinois now, because Illinois was playing much better earlier in the year, more confident. They've really sort of hit the skids here. You mentioned the 20-point win over Iowa. They had lost by like 40 to Duke before that, and by 20 to Wisconsin before that, and by like 15 to Michigan State even before that. So they had been getting blown out by decent teams. So a home win against Iowa, I suppose I can give them a golf clap, but not much more than that. And so if I'm Michigan, there's no question this is the easiest, with air quotes around it, of the 3 games remaining. Because, I mean, Maryland's starting 5, maybe their starting 5 is the best in the Big Ten. Michigan is close, but I would probably take Maryland. And then we all know about Michigan State and what can happen in Breslin, so no need to even go there. But yeah, I mean, Illinois, Kasparis Jakonis, their freshman point guard, he's talented. He's an NBA guy for sure, but I mean, has he hit a little bit of a wall? It seems like it. I mean, he's turning the ball over 3.5 times a game with less than 5 assists per game. Now, 5 assists per game is a good number, but you really want at least that 2-to-1 assist to turnover mark, and he's not even 1.5 to 1. And then you got like the big center Avicic, who can do some nice things. He's 13-8, but I think Michigan's got a couple nice matchups for him. And then Will Riley, Morris Johnson, you sort of go down the list. I mean, this is a talented team. Even still, you got people on social media talking about Illinois is maybe the most pound-for-pound talented team in the Big Ten. And, you don't want to see them in March because they could be a low seed that could make a run. I mean, I just think Illinois is kind of often overhyped. They never deliver. Almost ever. They rarely win Big Tens. They certainly don't win in March. Brad Underwood, I mean, he is one of the top 5, 6 coaches in the league, but he's not Tom Izzo and he's not Matt Painter. And so if Michigan has designs on winning this Big Ten, they absolutely have to win this game against Illinois.
And I think Wednesday against Maryland too. And if that happens, next Sunday, the regular season finale, we know where it is. It's in East Lansing. The atmosphere will be just crazy electric for these bitter rivals. They played just a week ago, so it's really a quick turnaround in the series. I can't remember the last time we played each other in such a short period of time. What does Michigan have to do differently or better to have a chance to get a W in East Lansing?
Shoot. They got to shoot better. I mean, sometimes it's just that easy. I don't have that box score directly in front of me. I think Michigan State finished that game 9 of 22, and Michigan was 4 of mid-20s, 5 of mid-20s. I mean, they were in the mid-20% over this 11-game stretch where they are, again, miraculously 9-2. They're actually one of the worst three-point shooting teams in the country. They have shot better than 30%, which is not a high mark. Once in 11 games, they're making about 27 28-ish, maybe 28% of their threes over that span. And let me tell you, if you are trying to go into Breslin and win a Big Ten championship, you cannot do it making 5 of 21 threes. Unless you are essentially flawless everywhere else. You're not letting MSU turn 14 offensive rebounds into 15 second chance points like it did the first time. They did a good job controlling the run, the transition game. I think it was 10-10 in transition points. That it has to look exactly like that again. And then, frankly, if you're Michigan, I think the game plan is just make it a 4-minute game. Whatever it looks like, it doesn't matter. If it's 50-50, if it's 90-90, you just got to be tied or right in that window in the final 4 minutes. And all they've done for the last 2 months is pull those games out, whether it's, a Namari Burnett heave, whether it's some clutch free throw shooting, whether it's Jackson Shelstad just throwing the ball out of bounds and giving Michigan some new life, whether it's Michigan really locking up on defense against Rutgers and holding them to 3 of 20 shooting in their final 20 shots. They've just done it tons of ways. And so, but in order to do it in East Lansing, with all that is expected to be on the line, this will be like Purdue, but more, right? And that's not because it always is. That's because it's for a Big Ten championship. It is the biggest rivalry in the state, one of the top 2 or 3 in the country. And in the regular season, you could not possibly play for more. You cannot have a bigger game than what that would be should both these teams win their next 2. No. And that would be for all the marbles.
Michigan has to bring their A game and has to shoot better because, watching Michigan State, Izzo's got these guys ready. I think they're playing their best ball right now and the best in the Big Ten, probably, don't you?
I would say so from what I've seen. And that's why, I really hate to be going potty in anybody's Cheerios around Ann Arbor, because we were as we were just talking before the show. Think about this turnaround. They were 8-24 a year ago. It is just so miraculous, so impressive, so enjoyable to go from potentially worst to first. They're looking at maybe the biggest turnaround in the history of this conference. So it can't be overstated. That said, as we've been talking about, it just doesn't feel like they're playing great, right? They're not shooting particularly well. The turnovers are not really getting cleaned up. It hasn't helped that Sam Walters has been out with a back. Reuben Jones has been sick all week. And so they've been thinner. Now that might actually help. Guys like LJ Kaysen getting some minutes, right? That could help in the tournament. But there has not been one. Michigan has not won a game going away or where there was not some sort of drama in the final 2 minutes since they were in Los Angeles. I guess technically that first game back against Washington. But that was, this is February 28th. Tomorrow is March. We're talking about the first week of January, right? And then if you look at the team you just mentioned, Michigan State, I believe they've won 4 in a row, road win at Illinois, home win Purdue, road win at Michigan, road win at Maryland. And now they haven't looked perfect either. They needed a 60-footer to beat Maryland. I think they were down 15 at one point on the road against Illinois. So it's not to say that they're perfect, but they beat Purdue by double digits. They beat Michigan on the road by double digits. Those are things Michigan has not done or even come close to in months. So Michigan State, I would say, absolutely has the upper hand. But the dirty secret is it doesn't matter because it all comes down to one game. And Michigan has showed on one day, one game, if you leave it up to the final minute, they're probably going to be the one to find the way.
We're going to find out, and it sure has been amazing to watch. But whatever happens in those next 3 games, the Big Ten tournament is right after that. Michigan should get the double bye. And I guess when you get to this point in the year and you get into conference tournaments, some teams are built for night after night, back-to-back games. Do you think this Michigan team is one of those that can run the gauntlet at the end in the tournament?
Well, the good news is, as you mentioned, the double bye that they are almost certainly looking at unless they lose out, which I don't think anybody's predicting. Although, I should say, that's actually not out of the realm of possibility.
No.
People just need to keep – there are 3 very good teams, certainly 2 coming in. So first things first. You got to take care of business. But the idea that they will be playing on a Friday and they haven't even seen a Friday in 3 years, right? They got bounced on Wednesday last year. They got bounced on Thursday the year before, the first game each time. And, there's no reason to think that they couldn't rip off 3 games in 3 days. Now, I think, the team you just mentioned, maybe Michigan State, maybe they might be a little better suited because of the depth that everybody talks about with them. They got 10 guys playing 15 minutes a game. And so that's just a little bit more for the legs. Now if Michigan gets some of its depth back and it gets back to its 9 or 10 man rotation with Walters and Rubin, then yeah, I think Michigan is absolutely a contender to win that Big Ten tournament. I think it also depends how things finish down the stretch of the regular season, right? Now, if you win the Big Ten regular season title, maybe some people might not subscribe to the same thinking. I am not at all concerned about that Big Ten tournament. I'm never trying to lose a game, but LJ Kaysen might get some more run early. Some Justin Pippen might get some time. I might be resting Trey and Danny a little bit. You might see some more Will Cheddar. Just because you have done, Dusty has said it. There's no question. He prioritizes the league, the regular season league title, as I think every single coach in this conference does, because that's the real title. The tournament is good and fun. It's good for sometimes maybe if you're not playing well and you want to get some momentum. So let's say Michigan comes up just short, right? And they do fall to MSU and East Lansing and they lose the Big Ten by 1 game and it's heartbreaking. You might want to, then I could see them wanting to make a statement, rip 3 off, and maybe get some revenge against MSU, unless MSU has just sort of folded and mailed in and is playing, knows it's going to be a 2 seed in the big dance and is already moving on. So are they capable? For sure. But I need to see like the bracket and need to know exactly what happened these final 10 days to see, in my estimation, sort of the motivation for each team, because that is a big factor in this Big Ten tournament, is motivation.
Well, there's a lot of basketball to be played in the next 2 weeks. And right now, I think I'm reading a lot of the bracketologists for the NCAA tournament see Michigan as a number 4 or number 5 seed. I suppose that could change in the next 2 weeks, but does that sound about right to you?
5 sounds low. 4 sounds just about right. I would say they're still in play for a 3 as well. If they are a 5 seed, that means they go 1 and 2 over the next 3 games and probably don't win the Big Ten tournament or even make it to the title game in the Big Ten tournament. It's interesting because they keep winning, yet all the computer metrics are actually dropping them. During this 9-2 stretch, they have gone from number 11 on KenPom to number 24 on KenPom. How does the NCAA tournament selection committee weigh everything in, right? Are they full? KenPom and net rankings and all those things and Bart Torvik, those are all factors. But also, winning games is a factor. Just the final result is a factor. And so, if you want to go on those metrics and how tight they've been winning games, they probably are more like a 5 seed. But if you want to go on results and how many teams in this country are 22-6 and without a bad loss, at Minnesota is the closest thing to a bad loss, but still, even that is Q2. They don't have any Q3 or Q4 losses. That's more 3 seed-ish, right? And so that's why I kind of settle on that 4 line. I think that's right around where they'll be, and everybody in Ann Arbor would have signed up for that in a heartbeat in October.
Oh yeah, there's no question about that. So many talented teams in the Big Ten, a lot of balance, as we've seen so many times in our lifetime. There's just not a night off in Big Ten conference play at home or on the road. And we've got some teams on the bubble right now. I don't think there's any question about that. But today, if you look at it for the NCAA tournament, how many teams do you think the Big Ten gets in?
Man, I'm gonna have to do some more live math. This is not what we want. So you got Michigan, Michigan State, Purdue, Wisconsin, Maryland, UCLA, all locks, right? And then they say Illinois. No. I don't know if I said Illinois.
No,
Illinois. I would call a lock. They're getting a little bubbly, but they're safe. Rutgers, no. Ohio State and Nebraska, both right on that line, and Indiana as well. I'd say Ohio State, Nebraska, and Indiana. Those three teams. That's probably the end of it. What is that? Somewhere between 7 and 9.
Yeah.
7 and 10 or so. So I think right around there. I think USC is probably out of it at this point. They're 14-14 in the league. They've lost 4 straight games. Rutgers was really going to need to. They were going to need to win out, and then a couple in the Big Ten tournament last night was just absolutely crushing for them. Nebraska, same thing, right? Michigan just snatched a couple souls this week with those wins, and maybe some bids from the league. So I'd say at least 7, could be as many as 9. But you mentioned, it wouldn't be the craziest thing in the world if Indiana wins this Big Ten tournament. You know what I mean? Or Ohio State wins the Big Ten tournament. Because I'll tell you, I'm not picking Purdue to win it. And Michigan and Michigan State, after the runs they've had this regular season, I wouldn't be surprised if they bow out. I don't know. Maybe Maryland or Wisconsin could win the Big Ten tournament. It is just so wide open. It is so wide open.
Yeah, it really is. Circling back to Michigan again, we know, of course, we're going to get a bid, and that matchups, as we've heard so often, are everything when you get in the tournament. Considering where we were in October, as we've been talking about, and where we are now, you get into the NCAA tournament. A lot of us would say, hey, it's just great to be back in the big dance. But can you imagine this team, the way they're sort of built for NCAA tournament play, tight games, knowing how to pull it out in the end? If this team could find a way to get past the first weekend to the Sweet 16, that would be just amazing, wouldn't it?
It would, and if they do, I feel so silly because my job is to cover this team, to follow this team, to have a beat on this team and a pulse on this team. And yet what I'm going to tell you is they could get bounced in the first round, or they could go to San Antonio. And I would be I would not be surprised by either result. Now, them losing in the first round would certainly be more surprising, I think, than them going all the way to San Antonio. If they advance out of the first weekend, I would say this season is already a success, no matter what, right? It could end with some heartbreak. It could be disappointing. The foundation has been built. Michigan basketball is back to being relevant. Right. And so that was job one. And beyond that, that's the beauty and the beast of this sport, right? Is that everything pretty much is defined by what you do in March. So you can go 14 or 15-5 in the Big Ten. You can beat Ohio State on the road and walk off against 2 top 5 NBA picks in Rutgers at home, and storm back against Purdue, and then have some thrillers against the rival Michigan State. But if you don't do it in March, people are going to kind of have a bad taste in their mouth. Now, I would still say it's a success already, but it could be, one of the great seasons in Michigan basketball history. That is not out of the realm of possibility moving into these next 4 weeks. If the good Michigan shows up, the hitting shots, moving the ball, protecting it somewhat, they're as dangerous as anybody.
Well, final question before we let you get away, Tony. And if we keep this season in perspective, it has far exceeded all of our expectations. No one in their right mind would have predicted this in October, as we've mentioned. So whatever happens in the next few weeks, I think Michigan fans have to take stock and thank their lucky stars that Dusty May is in Ann Arbor. And because of that, the future sure looks bright, doesn't it?
That it does. You had Ward and company locking him up the last few weeks. Throughout this month, making sure they were working behind the scenes, making sure that he was not going anywhere. Now, technically, I have not seen the contract. I don't know if there is a explicit clause that says you cannot go to Indiana, but signing a new contract, signing a new deal, raising the buyout, it all points to hey, you're here, you're staying. And Dusty's a stand-up guy, as salt of the earth as they come. He's not trying to pull one over on anybody. So I expect the future to be very bright. Now, can you always put together this type of transfer portal class? You never know. It is just hit or miss in this day and age. The encouraging part is that Dusty clearly can identify, right? He knows what he likes, whether that's skill set, whether that's temperament. He did it across leagues, the SEC, the Big Ten, the Ivy League, right? The American, he went coast to coast. He got coaches from all over the conference. He's got an All-American, a McDonald's All-American, Trey McKinney coming in, and they outlasted Michigan State for a 5-star in-state. That does not happen, like, ever. And so that's a really big deal. And I know they had a couple of international centers at the MSU game, 2025 guys. And I was talking to people around the program, and they're not going to take both, but they feel really good about landing one or the other. And that would just continue to round out this class. So the future is certainly bright. And I think Danny, I would imagine, I haven't spoken to him about it just because, they're still focused on the season. So I haven't asked Danny Wolf about his NBA plans yet. Clearly that is what he has designs on, and I think he's ready. I have said myself, I think the last time I was on your podcast, that I think he is a first-round pick. However, if he continues to not play perfectly down the stretch, if you get an NIL package together, what if somehow you could get Danny to come back another year? No, I think that's probably a long shot. I don't know. There are so many paths forward, and just the confidence you have to have in this coaching staff. Every team looks different year over year, but there's reason to believe that the Michigan is here to stay.
Well, it has been quite the joyride so far this year. We have the future is bright, and we have a huge couple of weeks coming up. And here discussing that with us today has been Tony Garcia from the Detroit Free Press. Tony, always a pleasure having you on the show, and we have a few weeks left, so we look forward to another visit soon.
Yes, I enjoy coming on, and make sure you take it easy when watching these games. Relax, everybody take deep breaths. I think that's what we all need. So appreciate it.
On Quick Hits today, Michigan tips off at 3:45 p.m. on Sunday at home against Illinois. The game can be seen on CBS. Thanks again to beat writer Tony Garcia from the Detroit Free Press for being our guest today. Lots of action on the Michigan sports scene right now. Hockey lost a really tough one to Ohio State down there on Thursday night, 2-1 in OT. Michigan might be a bubble team when it comes to the NCAA tournament, but they have tonight's rematch with the Buckeyes and the Big Ten tournament next week to make their case. Football picked up a huge commit on Friday for the class of 26. Massive 3-star offensive lineman Bear McWhorter made his verbal to Sharon, even though the majority of analysts saw him as a heavy lean to the team he grew up cheering for, Alabama. So great pickup. Spring ball is starting soon, and we'll have plenty of football to talk about again soon. In the next few weeks, we're going to focus on basketball, as it looks to be an exciting month of March for Dusty May and his team. So let's enjoy the ride they are taking us on. That does it for now. Have a great Wolverine weekend, everyone. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Until we meet again, take care, and as always, go blue.
Thanks for joining us today on The Michigan Man, here on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V-Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew. Our listener lines are open 24/7 for your calls at 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Or email us at themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. That's themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. The Michigan Man Podcast is produced at the studios of Robin Lynn Productions, Allen Park, Michigan, and is not affiliated with the University of Michigan. Go Blue!